Well, good morning, everybody. Um, I'm actually redoing the second page of this thing. I screwed up numbering some of these items. This actually turns out to be 17 suggestions when you actually count them. Um, First one on the second page, this actually could be the first one of all. I think that, in my experience, being able to diffuse a situation, a difficult situation, or an embarrassing situation with a little self-deprecating humor, um, a little kidding of somebody, can go a long way to easing tensions in a maybe difficult situation, showing your humor if you've got a sense of humor, and having fun with people where you work is great. I mean, it just makes work a much better place to be if people are allowed to show a sense of humor and have some fun. So use that. Um, the reason let me just say there's a reason I put this link up here, which I'm going to get to. First thing is I have interviewed in my career lots of young people wanting to get into marketing business, and I've seen lots of people who are 6 months at one job and then 8 months and 10 months, and you wonder what's the problem. Why are they having to leave? Either, they weren't working out or they didn't do a very good job choosing where they wanted to work. But either way, it's just not a positive thing. Um, so it's important to really try to, in any job you have, last at least a year. If you don't have a year at the job, it almost doesn't belong on your resume because you haven't gone through a whole business cycle. Business cycles and planning cycles are usually a year, right? You plan for the next fiscal year. You budget for the next fiscal year. Um, so try to stick it out. Now, there are situations which can be very difficult that you could find yourselves in. I certainly very much hope you don't. But the reason I put the Susan J. Fowler link here was that this was a young woman who got a job in the tech department, the coding department at Uber, and was harassed in that culture. In fact, her coming out with that and writing about it or blogging about it, I think that's what she did, got picked up and noticed by the press and was a big reason why Travis Kalanick, who had founded Uber, had to leave the company because there were other things, a lot of other things, but this was one thing. It was a very, good old boys sort of culture, anti-feminist, and a lot of things going on in the workplace that should not have been going on in the workplace. And this young woman was the victim of some of these things in her department. She went to personnel, human resources, and complained. Human resources told her boss, which got her in more trouble. I mean, it was just a mess. I'm just going to quickly go to her website because she's come out with a book, I think in the last 6 months or so, last year or so. And the book's called Whistleblower. Fight for Justice at Uber. Gets very good reviews. Blog post. Yeah, harassment and retaliation riveted the nation. So I would read it just to see some examples of some bad things that can be handled and what can happen at companies that aren't well managed. And you'll also see, I think, someone with a lot of courage. But despite the hard time she had, I believe I'm right in that she stayed there for a year and she stuck it out. So now, getting promoted at a job is one of the best signs of someone who's really talented and going places that there can be. I always, when I saw a young person's resume, was impressed when they started as an assistant and then was a manager and then maybe up another level. Because nothing says more about you than the people you work with think so much of you that they're going to move you up to take on more responsibility. So that's another thing you want to try to make happen and have on your resume. Now, this one, if it needs to get done, be the kind of person who gets it done. That's it. And I have worked in my career with all kinds of people. And there are people who, when you tell them something has to be done by a certain date, it's going to get done before that date, probably, no matter what it is. And maybe they'll have some issues and problems they need to talk to you about, and that's fine. That's what you want. You want to try to help solve problems if you can. That's kind of your job as a boss. But there are other people who, seem very confident everything's fine, but they haven't done the necessary detail work, detail follow-up and tracking work to make sure things happen. And in a lot of your first jobs, you're going to be given projects, okay? You're going to be, if you're working in an event management, you're going to be the assistant manager of the event, and you're going to be given a bunch of things to do yourself that you're responsible for. And it's going to be detail-oriented with dates and hassles and people and variables, and you're just going to have to manage it. Example I would cite for this is I worked for this Israeli company called Magink Display. This was a great electronic display, but the company had also developed some non-digital displays, paper-based signs. And they had a sign that was maybe 7 or 8 feet tall by 4 feet wide, about the size of maybe a bus shelter ad here in New York, maybe a little smaller. And this sign somehow had slats with 3 sides, and it was made up of a bunch of slats, maybe 30 across the sign from left to right. And these slats could turn and rotate and somehow magically create 6 different images. The American Girl company early on saw an example of this sign, and the creative director for the company fell in love with it. And when they were putting together their Manhattan store, the first time they put it together and were opening it, he wanted one of these signs to be at the front of a new type of Native American doll that they were doing. And the sign was supposed to coordinate with an audio track. And so I gave the manufacturing and sending of this sign from China, it was made in China, to a guy I'd worked with that I actually brought over to this company, this little small company. And the guy was confident and this and that, and I, as his boss, was as much responsible for the mistake as he was. But he basically just kind of said, told people to get things done by a certain time and never really followed up with the details and the timing. And the sign didn't get there for the store opening, and it was a huge opportunity lost. It was a huge embarrassment. It was just a shame. So I tried, does not cut it. Get things done. Don't burn bridges. It's not worth it. So you will be in situations, I'm sure, in your careers where you're unhappy or you feel you've been not treated fairly by your boss or management at your company, and so-and-so got promoted and you didn't, or your quote isn't fair. I mean, whatever it is, and you're angry, okay? And so you're just dying to tell somebody off and, tell them what they did wrong and, screw you and, storm out of the building. So don't burn bridges, and don't spend a lot of time dwelling on negative stuff like that. And in my situation, I worked at this place I ended up staying there for 10 years. It was a Gannett Outdoor where I was head of business development for the company, bringing in new clients. And I was very angry with the CEO. I mean, I liked him. I fun guy, smart guy, honest, respectable guy, but somehow I was getting screwed over on stuff, and it really made me mad. I wasn't getting the support I needed to do what I wanted to do. And I rehearsed these angry speeches all the time in my head. And God, what a waste of time. Just a waste of time. And by the way, the company ended up being sold. It was a division of the Gannett Company, publisher of USA Today. It was sold, and a lot of us, including the CEO and me, left the company. We were let go by the buyer. And I went on to other things, and he went on to other things. And by the way, he's a real great friend of mine now. He was a mentor to me. Many times he hired me at that Israeli company I talked about. It was because of him I got that job when I needed it. And he's still a friend. I went to his 80th birthday party in Toronto a couple of years ago. And I see him whenever he comes to New York. We get a glass of wine or two and catch up. And he's a wonderful guy. Yeah. Anyway, don't burn bridges. It's not worth it. Keep your friends, keep your relationships. And speaking of which, don't be a fair weather friend either. And I don't know if that phrase is used much anymore, but it describes the kind of person who, they're your friend when you're doing great and when maybe they need things from you. They want to take you to lunch and how you doing, and you socialize with your spouses and partners and whatever. But then when you're maybe out of the job and looking for another job and not the powerful person you were, a week ago, that person has nothing to do with you. They're gone. They don't try to help you. In fact, they don't even want to talk to you. Don't be someone like that. You're somebody's friend in business or wherever. You're their friend, and that's that. Okay. Don't be, please, the type of person. Go to your boss with issues. Yes, your boss's job is to help you solve those issues. And if there's some big avalanche about to, come down from the mountainside and, cause a big problem and about it, that's your job to go let people know about it, But the people that I respected the most are the ones who come to me also with some ideas about what to do about it. Because I remember when I was starting in my career, going into my boss, was a very smart guy, was a good boss, and saying, oh, well, blah, 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 this is a problem. And he would say, well, how would you fix it? What should we do? You need to have an answer. And when you're able to solve your own problems, or your boss sees you solving your own problems like that, that's when they start to think about promoting you. Have solutions. Okay, so this is almost more of a life thing than it is a career thing. And it's something I've come to over the years, and it basically has to do with also kind of how you define success and what is success. And you know what? It's not just money and position and what you do and how important you are. There are other things that can define success. And so another side of that is that, in my view, any person who is working for a living, no matter what they do, whether it's at McDonald's or they're a teacher or a sanitation worker or a bus driver or someone checking you in at the airport or the CEO of a company, or, if that person is responsible and working for a living and paying his or her bills and living up to his or her responsibilities, that person deserves equal respect with any other person. I call people sir and ma'am and miss and, things like that. People deserve respect no matter what they do for a living. Okay. Okay, now this gets back to career now. So I'm kind of jumping around here. This is point number 15 out of 17, so there's just a few more you'll be glad to hear. Best kind of business experience is don't start, if you can help it, as an account person in the agency business. Believe it or not, don't start as someone who handles the social networking for such and such a company. It's a fine maybe way into the company. I'm not going to say it's that big. Anything you can do to get a job these days is good, okay? But your objective should be, as soon as possible, to get profit and loss responsibility, really run a business, every aspect of the business. The social networking, the advertising, the product development, the packaging, the sales, the pricing, whether it makes any money, experience like that, the sooner you get it, the better off you'll be for wherever you want to go and wherever your career is going to be. Okay, I'm going to stop and then